Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Let's Talk Real Estate. Today, we have a really great show for you, and we have a well, I'm tongue-tied today. A special
I've been
guest,
called worse. Don't worry.
Lambrose is here as our specialist today, and Lambrose has his own brokerage firm, and he is an incredible real estate guru, and we're going to be getting some really incredible tips. We're going to really work today on investing in real estate, and yes, there's still opportunities out there, but it's like everything else, we got to work for it. So good morning. Well,
Good morning.
Everybody
Yeah,
else.
wherever you happen to be. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody out there. Glenda, thank you for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun last time, and happy to be back. Just a small little correction there. I don't have my own brokerage firm. I'm an independent contractor, so I work for myself. So,
yeah. Okay, thank you. Well noted. It's okay because, he's been around. How long have you been doing real estate for?
It's my 12th year now.
Okay, so we're not talking to a newbie here. We're talking to somebody who has been around and has been doing it, and that's what really matters. I just did a Facebook Live just to talk about this before the first thing this morning, and the other thing that I really admire and that I have to say, I had this meeting last night, totally in another different world. But here's the thing, when you live something, you work in it and you live with it and you breathe it, you really know it. So it's not just about going and being educated, going to school and education. That's not where it all just comes from. You have to really be into things, and living it is where the education really comes.
Oh yeah, 100%. You have to be in the weeds, so to speak, right on the front lines. Use whatever term you want, because that way you get a feel for what exactly is happening at the ground level, right? Because everybody has an opinion, and people are writing newspaper articles and saying their comments on TV or whatever that happens to be. But unless you're actually in the weeds, then you see firsthand of what's happening out there.
Yeah, and I've had all through my life where people, try to say that they know of what's doing, and everybody's got the 2 cents worth, but they've never done it. And unless you've actually done it, and listen, like at the end of the day, if it all comes from, never mind, it's not just our wins, it's our losses that really take us to another whole level.
Yeah.
And
yeah. No, we learn more from losing than we do from winning, I think. Right.
Yes, and I'll talk to you about some of my major, huge learnings. I won't call them failures because they actually turned out okay, but it's all about, like what you get from what you've gone through. Mm-hmm. So instead of giving up, and that's the whole reason we're doing this, is that we can start provide some type of an education, maybe get you to start thinking outside the box. There's different ways of doing so many different things. So let's head into it. Now we're talking about investing. What does it mean to invest in real estate on another level of not just buying the home to live in?
Yeah, investing in real estate, I'm a big believer in investing in real estate. If you look at the history of home prices, they've always gone in an upward trajectory. Yeah, we've had ups and downs, certainly, but I'm a big believer in buying and holding property, because that way it's always going to go up. They're not making any more land, right? To rephrase a famous quote. So it can only go up. It can only go in one direction, right? Over the long period of time. And on top of that, you have so many other benefits tied into it. You have tax benefits, right? So people are talking about interest rates rising. Absolutely. However, if this is an income property for you, if it's an investment for you, you get to, I'm not going to say write off, because I'm not an accountant, but there are ways to get that tax as a tax benefit, the interest that you pay on a mortgage, on a line of credit. If it's in order to make money, then absolutely there is a tax benefit there, and you get that tax money back. Any renovations that you make to the property, anything you do to earn that income is going to allow you to get a credit from CRA in one way or another, right? So then there's cash flow, right? So if you're renting out that property, that tenant likely is paying all your carrying costs, especially in today's market where the rents are through the roof, literally. They just, they'll pay for your mortgage, they'll pay any property taxes, they'll pay all that stuff rolled into their rent. So it's almost like a double benefit that you're getting. So you're getting the cash flow from the property, plus you get to write off the interest that you paid for the property. So they're really, if you do it well, your risk is very low. And I mean, there's so many benefits that you can gain from it. Yeah.
So let's do a step back.
Yeah.
Let's go to the point where I'm a newbie.
Okay.
And I have not done any type of investing, but I hear so many people talking about buying a property to rent it out.
Mm-hmm.
And I need, I'm scared because I'm scared that I've never done this and I'm not sure really what to do, but it sounds kind of awesome.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like I said, if you do it well, it is awesome. I mean, there's so many benefits you can gain from it. If you're a newbie and you're scared, I get that. We've all been there. It was my first time at one point as well. I mean, I lost money doing it, but you learn along the way, like we mentioned a few minutes ago. So if you're new and nervous, then I don't suggest you do it alone. Go in with somebody. Do a joint venture, right? Partner up with somebody.
Whoa,
right?
whoa. You're throwing out terms that people might not understand. So we're going to be walking through today. Like I'm a big advocate when I do my coaching, I talk about baby steps.
Okay.
Because, the world can't change all at once. The world wasn't created all at once. So, the story Rome wasn't built in a day. Well, either was real estate when you're investing in it.
That's right.
So, we're talking about a joint venture. What's a joint venture?
Well, in simple terms, you're partnering up with someone, right? So you're partnering up. It could be a family member. It could be a friend. It could be an experienced investor that you trust, right? So let that person guide you into the market. So that way you get to learn the ropes firsthand. You see what it's all about. You minimize your risk because now, I mean, depending on what that partnership entails, is it 50-50? Is it a different split? Whatever. I mean, that's up to you to figure out with the person that you're going in with. And that way they can teach you.
How you're going in together.
Yeah, absolutely. Just going in together. I mean, joint venture is just a fancy term for partnering up with other people. And it doesn't have to be one person. It could be a group of people. Maybe there's 3 or 4 of you that say, hey, you know what? We all put in X amount. We'll get this property. It has, 4 income streams. So let's say it's a 4-unit building, and we'll split the cash flow.
Good morning. We have a visitor who's watching us today, and that's David. Whoops. There's David. Good morning, David, because David's interested in investing.
Good morning,
let's
David.
start even at the beginning. I'm going to even go back steps. Okay. When I started out investing, it came to me at one point that real estate is, when I looked at Toronto, there were areas of Toronto, even when times were bad, there's certain areas in Toronto that always held their numbers. They never really dropped. And, even though the times maybe they just stayed still, or maybe they dropped down a fraction, but not as other areas. But as a newbie, and this is why I just want to get this out to begin, I started by connecting. Like, this is how I did it. And I do highly recommend it because it brings you into the comfort zone. It brings you into the comfort zone because, first of all, if you can get involved with some real estate groups, you get out and you meet people that are in it. You also start listening to lectures. So as you listen to lectures, you start learning the terms of the real estate. You start understanding. You start meeting people who are doing what you want to do. It's really important. Yeah, well, David's asking if we'll cover about mortgages. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. But I just want to go through the initial steps of being a newbie and getting your feet wet and giving you some form of the comfort. You know, the other thing that as you start to join groups and you start to meet people, and there's two folds of meeting people as well that are really important. First of all, you might meet somebody that you could partner up with and do a joint venture with, because those are the same people. You know, if you're looking at investing groups, those people are looking too. And as you're doing that, you might find you're somebody that you really do connect with, and maybe over a period of time you have that comfort level. And we'll talk about something that's very important because I learned the hard way. And the second part is while you're doing that, you can start now also looking around, knowing what you have maybe to invest, of markets that intrigue you. Markets maybe because, you know, you might be wanting to get involved in the student area of rentals. So you might want to be looking at an area where there's universities where students go and rent out. So student rentals is another whole phase of doing things. But it's right at the beginning, before you even go into investing, it's called education. And education, not meaning it's a different form of going to school, but forming that. The second part of going into these groups is what ends up happening too is, if you're meeting other investors, they have other connections that will help you, such as contractors. If you don't find the right contractors, your life can be, excuse me, can we say this? Screwed. It's
I thought you were
really,
going to say worse. Okay. Okay.
it's
Yeah.
so true, right?
It's absolutely true. Contractors, yeah. I mean, I'm actually dealing with a situation right now where you know, I looked into them. I asked for reviews. I got the reviews. I asked other agents if these people were trustworthy. I got some rave reviews from them, and I referred them to my clients. And it's been um, a little bit of a nightmare. You know, I mean, the work is good, etc., but at the same time, it's just dragging on and on and on. Contractors, what you have to understand about contractors is they don't only take on your job; they take on other jobs.
Yeah.
So whatever they promise you, oh, it's going to be done in 2 weeks. Well, it's been going on 2 months now, and there's still quite a lot left to be done in the house. And my sellers are trying to get it out on the market. They've already lost, who knows how much they've lost, because we've lost so much time on the market. Now we're heading into the holidays, so it's going to be a little tricky. So that can be a big risk. So make sure you really vet those contractors and talk to people who've actually used them, right? Because that's a big thing. 100%.
Yes. Sorry to, um, the other thing is, don't take a contractor's word from it
Yeah,
when they go drive you do it. And I heard this from a another investor friend of mine,
yeah,
where he had a contractor who drove him around and said,
yeah,
yes, I did that property and that property and that property,
yeah,
and they took him at his word.
yeah,
Well, later on they found out that he didn't do any of those properties.
yeah.
What you need to do is you need to knock at doors and ask people, are these the contractors that work for you?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And whatever they tell you, double it or triple it in your mind. If they tell you 2 weeks, it's going to be at least 4 weeks, right? If not more. You know, and then cost wise, every time you start a renovation, you know, in your head, in your budget, double it, because there's always going to be things that come up, surprises, you know, whatever. So you have to anticipate that as well. So don't just, if your budget is tight and your timeline is tight, then that's a big risk that you're taking on your end, for sure.
So the other thing that I did, and I recommend it, but you know, this whole idea here is just to put things out to people, is I actually hired a mentor and I sat in a class and we talked about all different forms of real estate. We went through all the different strategies, but never mind just the strategies. We also started talking about renos and how to do renos and how to change properties and so on and so forth. And we can get into that a little bit more afterwards. But, you know, when we say about educating yourself, it's just that when you get into it, there's going to be more surprises. You have no idea what will come with it. But the more you understand, the more you will be able to prepare and pivot.
Yeah, 100%. And I would even go so far as to say, you know what, don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. Like, especially if you are a novice investor and you want to renovate a property, it's good to do some of the work yourself. I'm not saying do all the work yourself, but it's actually quite easy to, I shouldn't use the word easy either, but it's simple to learn some of these things like laying flooring, painting, some of these tasks that you can do, because the best way we learn something is by doing it. So once we do it, not only are we learning a skill, we're saving money by doing it ourselves, but at the same time, you're learning details about the house, about construction, all these things that you can bank in your memory for the next time that you look at an investment property, and that way you'll have a better idea of what it is that you're looking for. Because when you look at a property and it's a complete mess, you might be scared and walk away from it. Whereas if you've done some of the work and say, you know what, it's not that hard to change the floor. It's not that hard to give this a paint job, or, you know, swap out the plumbing and the light fixtures. You know, so I can get that done easy enough, right? And then just clean it up, and there you go, and rent it out, right? So it may not be as scary as you think if you don't have that experience of actually doing the work inside the house. Yeah.
But on top of doing the work, which, listen, I totally understand. I remember my first property of going into, and I was actually there present when walls were taking down. Why? Because even though I had some form of understanding, when you are there, first of all, it's your property.
Yeah.
So you know, being around your contractors, you know, first of all, makes them more accountable. But it's really important when walls are open that you start asking questions of what things are doing and watching how they're doing things, because that forms yourself to learn a lot more as you're going forward.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that way, again, you can get a better idea if you see a house and say, you know what, maybe this wall is not a structural wall, and you can easily determine that by the position that it is in the house, right? So you can say, you know what, I could probably open up this wall and make the kitchen bigger, brighter, et cetera, right? So you need to have that vision, and it helps you with the vision if you understand a little bit how a house is structured, how everything works, where the plumbing lines are, you know,
Right.
where the wires are, all these things. Yeah.
And also, you know, making sure that you know which wall is a supporting wall, which are the walls that you need to keep, making sure that, you know, going forward, if you're holding on to a property for a while, that you know that this is the room, that making sure that, you know, that supporting beam is there, that nobody does something and taking out a supporting wall when that needs to be. Because here's the thing, if you're not dealing with the right type of people, crazy things can happen.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that.
Right. So let's start. First of all, another thing is when you're buying a second property and it's not you're going to be your prime property, let's talk about how much you need to have down.
Well, traditionally, you need 20% down. If you already own a property here in Ontario and Canada, probably you need 20% down to buy a second property. Are there ways around that? I'm sure there are. If you move out of your, you know, primary residence and you move into the second residence, you may be able to get it for less than 20% down. But generally speaking, yes, it's 20% down. Yeah.
So, okay, so we're looking at a property and we're starting to get tuned into the areas that we need to look at too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, let's
sorry, Glenda, because I mean, this kind of is in line with David's question here. He says, is it hard to purchase a second property? So, I mean, It's case by case, right? So you have to evaluate your finances. Are you in a position to put 20% down? Are you in a position to carry that property? If for some reason or another you can't rent it out fast enough. Let's say the renovations take longer than you anticipated. Let's say your tenant moves out. Now it's vacant for a month or two. Can you carry that property? Let's say something happens. There's a leak in the house. There's a fire, God forbid, something. Can you take care? Do you have an emergency fund? So when you say, is it hard to purchase a second property? Yes, it's hard. I mean, everything worth doing in life is hard, but there's a lot of benefits to it as well. So I don't know if you want to, ask a more specific question, like then we can certainly answer that. But it is hard.
His other question is do you have to show you can cover two mortgages?
Yeah, again, just as it's case by case on purchasing a second property, there are so many lending options out there. The big banks will probably turn you down if you can't show that you can cover two mortgages. If you can show it, then great. You can go the traditional route and get an A lender, and an A lender, but I mean, the big five banks, right? So then there's B options, like there's B lenders or private lenders or alternative lenders. I'm not a mortgage broker, so I can't speak too much to that end, but there are lending options out there. And some of these private lenders, they don't even care how much you make. They just look at the property and they say, okay, is this a good property for me to invest in? And they say, what's the, how much you paying for it? What's the potential for rent? Okay, no problem. Here's the money, right? Then you're on the hook. But you have to be careful because these private lenders, they also charge a higher interest rate. But if you, in your calculations, if you think, okay, with the higher interest rate, will the rent cover all this stuff? And then again, it goes back to what I said off the top. You can write some of that off as well if this is an investment property for you. So you need a good accountant, and you need a good mortgage broker who has connections to alternative lending to get you into a second property. Yeah.
And you can also look at other things that will help you to carry that property, such as maybe breaking down that house from a single family dwelling into a duplex,
Right.
which takes a lot more work that needs to be done. But there's some secrets that you can look at when you're buying, and that's part of it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. To that effect, I will only say that make sure you do it the right way, do it legally, because you might run into insurance issues or litigation issues if you don't get the right proper permits, et cetera, and set it up for a legal duplex. Yeah.
So when you're going for something like that, what I highly suggest is, first of all, one of the areas that I also looked at when I was purchasing properties was to find a house that had two entranceways.
Mm-hmm.
That way, instead of you can always create your own.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. As long as there's a clear path to the basement, you can create your own. One option is you take out a window and put in a door, right, to go to the basement. But again, make sure you do it the right way. Make sure you do it legally. Have somebody from the city come by and assess and make sure there's enough, space between the neighbors to put in stairs, to put in a cover. There's all kinds of things that need to be done. There has to be at least two exits for the second unit, right? All these things. The ceilings have to be high enough. There has to be, fire alarms and carbon monoxide detectors and all these things.
And even some of the places are now having that, especially I know in Oshawa, and I think Toronto is now, you have to have the strobe lighting as well with the.
Exactly. For the, the hearing impaired, you have to have the strobe lighting, certainly, all that. So, but the municipalities have come around only in the last, I would say less than 10 years or so, probably since 2015, 2016. I think they before that, it was very difficult to get a permit. Sometimes they wouldn't even allow permits in places like, Brampton or Mississauga. And now they've all come around and are encouraging people to apply for a second permit. So now they're giving out permits for, if you want to make your basement into a legal apartment, you can do it much easier than you could 5, 6, 7 years ago. Yeah.
So the whole thing is, and it's really worth that once you have found yourself a property that you're looking at, and if you can do the thing of finding a property that has a second entranceway, then you're avoiding, first of all, a huge cost, which is I anticipated years ago, and I'm sure it's gone up to put in just the stairway area, and that is at least another $20,000 to $30,000 to if there's digging and so forth though. So if you can, when you're out in your journey and you're looking at it, it's a lot easier to start with that. But when you find your property that you're looking at, it's really important though that you take a visit down to the city, the
Yeah.
municipality, and go to the planning department and start asking questions. People are there, are really willing to do that. You can go do a lot of work online, but you need to start asking questions of what it takes to make a legal unit, because there are some standards that you must need, and there's the steps along the way that you have to call in your people from the city to come throughout the time of the construction, because before when you open up a wall and you do certain things, they have to come and approve that before even along the way, to make sure that it ends up to be legal. And the
Yeah.
other thing is you want to make sure, because if it's a legal unit, you also have a better, first of all, for resale, it's makes a total difference, but also for insurance wise.
Yeah.
So all of these things are going to affect your property.
Yeah. 100%. I agree.
Okay, so David is asking, can you elaborate on what strobe lighting is?
Yeah, strobe light is basically, I don't know if you grew up in the 70s, the disco, I'm just joking. No, but it's similar to that. It's these little lights that kind of flash on the fire detector, on the on the smoke detectors. Exactly. So not only is there a loud piercing sound, but it's also going to have this flashing light, right? So people will know. So if you're hearing impaired, you may not hear the detector go off, but at least you'll see the flashing light, right? So you'll know something's up. Yeah.
Yeah, so that it's now in a lot of places. Like I said, my last property that I did was in Oshawa. So, but what I understand now is Toronto has now made that mandatory as well.
Yeah.
So it's really important. And again, these are, they're a little more expensive to have that, but you don't, it's the, like having one where you have your smoke alarm, your strobe light in there, as well as your carbon monoxide as well. And it is more expensive, but it brings down your insurance. And you can't get your place legalized if you're doing if you need to have the city to come and investigate it, unless you have these things as well.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like you said, Glenda, have a city inspector come by, assess what needs to be done, and then follow that list to a T, because they're going to come back and check and make sure everything's done before they issue you that permit. Yeah.
And what, they're actually there, actually, not to be a pain in the ass, and even though they seem to at times, but they're there to make sure that that property that you're building is safe. Because
Yeah.
the last thing you want to do is make a property and that you have problems later. If there's going to be, if you're doing a lot of renovations to that property, you want to make sure that while the walls are open, while maybe the ceiling is open, these are the times where you can change your wiring,
Yeah.
and again, go in and start checking around the people that you're using. Start doing, make sure you do, there's enough places now that you can check the references online, and then there's so many different ways now to really checking people out to make sure that you have the right people that are doing the work for you.
Yeah.
And also go into the city, because sometimes the city have heard of some of these people too,
Yeah.
whether
No,
they good or
absolutely.
bad.
Absolutely. I mean, it's expensive to get a permit and do it the right way, but it's well worth it, because not doing it may end up being way more expensive for you if, let's say, God forbid, there's a fire, there's a flood, something happens. Your insurance might deny your payout and say, sorry, we didn't know you put in a separate unit there. Is it legal? No. Oh, well, SOL, right? We're not paying, right? So then you have to pay out of your own pocket. And that's way more expensive than getting the permits and doing it properly. Yeah. Plus legal costs. If your tenant might end up suing you, or if somebody gets hurt, why would you want to put yourself in a position to be in that position, like to get sued if it's the house is not set up properly and it's not legal? Yeah.
Oh, big time. And at the end of the day, whatever you're making, you're going to end up losing.
Mm-hmm.
So we go around and we're looking at, and we're in the middle of investigating and doing all of this. And, how do we figure out how to break down a house?
What do you mean?
So when you're converting, let's say, a single family dwelling, and you want to build, and there's, reasons of having a duplex as opposed to having a single family dwelling is, first of all, you're bringing in two streams of income.
Okay. Yeah.
Into that property, right?
Certainly.
Yeah. And so that if one property, if the the prime idea is to get the one unit paying for the mortgage, and the other one is basically could be cash flow.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So combined, you will have your carrying costs covered as well as a little bit extra, because you need that emergency fund. You need that vacancy fund, right? In case one of the units is not rented for a couple months or more, right? So if you need to do more renovations, and tenants, they're not known for maintaining the property well, right? So after a tenant moves out, you're going to have to paint, you're going to have to fix things, you're going to have to do stuff. So you need that extra cash flow for sure.
And remember, that little bit of paint actually does wonders when you're looking at bringing somebody in. I always had a way of, before, when somebody left, I'd go in and put an extra coat of paint, and I cleaned that place to a T, so that, first of all, it looked, inviting. And second of all, that I would go through, and I would always tell my tenant, the way I left it for you is how I expect to receive it back.
Yeah, absolutely. But before you even break down the house itself, I would say break down the neighborhood. Is this an area where you want to invest in? Just because the house appears to be a good deal, you can get it for a good price, and you're willing to do the work to bring it up to speed. What kind of tenant are you going to attract? If it's in a lousy neighborhood where there's drugs or other crime going on, you're just going to attract the same crowd, and you're going to get less than desirable tenants living in your house. Maybe they're going to bring other people in. They might have parties. They might have God forbid something nefarious going on in your house. You don't want that. You don't want them to turn your home into a grow up or anything like that. So you really have to research the neighborhood, make sure it's a good neighborhood to invest in. I would never buy the best property in the worst neighborhood. I would rather buy the worst property in the best neighborhood, right? So, because then that way you can fix the property itself, but you can't fix the neighborhood, right?
The other thing that you should know, that you can actually go to the police department and ask them about the neighborhood.
100%. Yeah.
So, because I can imagine people saying, how am I going to know what's going on? Yeah. Go to the local police department that's in the neighborhood and ask them, what the crime rate is about, if they've had, what the issues are, if there's drug problems, and so on and so forth. And they'll be straight up with you. So you'll know.
You can look online. Yeah, absolutely. You can look online as well. There's crime stats that you can look online. It's mapping feature. And then you can zoom in on certain neighborhoods and see, if there's a lot of little dots here, those are usually indicating what crime is going on there. Most of them are break-ins, things like that. So you want to stay away from neighborhoods where there's a lot of break-ins, things like that, et cetera.
Yeah, very important. And also what you need to make sure when you're going in and buying in a property is, what type of transportation it is around. Because remember, when you're buying, you're also buying on the assumption that one day you're going to sell. Never buy a property thinking you're not going to sell it.
Yeah, always have the end game in your mind for sure. I always look at resale value or potential resale value. Even though I believe in buying and holding, you never know what life throws at you. So at some point in time, you may have to sell it, right? Or let's say you carry it for a number of years, you pass on, you give it to your kids. Maybe your kids need to sell it. So you always want to have that resale value in mind for sure. So you want to be near good schools, right? Because good schools are always going to bring up the value of the property, regardless if you have children yourself or not. That's not the point. You want to be near public transportation, right? Because a lot of tenants can't afford a vehicle, or maybe they don't want a vehicle. Maybe they work from home, or maybe they are students or something like that, and they take the bus. So you want to be at least a short walk to the bus stop, if not the actual subway stop, right? So those are always going to carry their value. You mentioned a few minutes ago about neighborhoods that didn't go down in value as much as others. So those are the ones that always hold their value for sure.
Right. There's a lot of new areas that are being built up. But you know what? So the other thing is sometimes it's really hard that you don't want to get into a new development because there's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of, there's pros and cons between both of it. But, the whole idea is if you can find something that's already been built and you can turn around and make your mark onto that property. And
Yeah.
don't look for something that is beautiful all the rest, because sometimes the ones that, they don't look so good are where you can actually get the best finds.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Shopping is another one, right? You want to be close to a shopping center or something like that. If you see, you know, um, big brand names like Walmart, Starbucks, all these places going into a neighborhood, they've done their research, and this is an up and coming neighborhood. So it might be a good idea for you to invest in there as well, right? Just piggyback off the big boys and girls. So yeah, keep that in mind. Make sure the area is well lit, right? A lot of tenants are single moms, right? So they don't want to be walking around at night with their kids in the dark. So just be careful of all these things, and just have the foresight to say, you know what, if I was renting this out to a single mom, would she feel safe here? Would she want to stay here? Right, that kind of thing.
And you can always put up other lighting, like, motion lighting and things like that in your property.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
For,
That's a
so you're going
necessary.
to make your area more safe for your tenants as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
So it's not just the inside, but the outside. And how do we make sure that we, one of the main things that it can be fixed is giving property curb appeal.
Yeah, curb appeal is huge as well. A for resale value, but B to attract tenants, right? Because the tenants, you're going to attract a better quality tenant. The nicer your place looks, you're going to attract a better quality tenant. If the place looks like a dump, nobody's going to want to live there unless they don't care. And if they don't care, then guess what? They're not going to care about your property either, and it's going to just get even worse. So make it nice, make it attractive inside and outside. To attract the right person, right? And that way, the right tenant will pay more. It's just going to be a much better, and they're going to probably stay longer. They're going to maintain the property better for you. They're going to be less trouble. All these things, right? So it goes a long way for sure.
And we can do little things to the home that it will increase and help. And also, the one thing that you are able to do as a landlord is to, when you have a tenant or potential tenant, is to really do your homework with who you're bringing into your
Mm,
property.
yeah, 100%. You have to do um, the research, your due diligence on that potential tenant. Make sure you get a credit report, not just a credit score. See how many times they've been late on payments. See if they've been through bankruptcies or things like this. I'm not saying outright to deny these people, but maybe there's a story behind it. Maybe they're just got a divorce and they had to pay out all these expenses. So just dig into that a little bit more. Have a face-to-face with the potential tenant before you sign the lease, and say, is this a person that I'd be happy with renting out my property, right? Make sure you don't only get a job letter, pay stubs, but have somebody, if it's not you, your agent, your property manager, whoever, to verify the income and the job, because sometimes they'll give you a job letter from 6 months ago, but guess what? They just got fired, right? So, or they're looking for a new job right now, kind of thing. And call past landlords. If they do have any past landlords on the application, call them up and ask them their opinion. Hey, would you rent to this person again if you had the opportunity, right? Ask them questions like, have they ever been late on their payments? Don't just call their current landlord, because if the current landlord wants to get rid of them, he's going to give you a great review anyway about the tenants. So go one back or two back, or whoever they were renting from before the current landlord, if there is such a person on, because sometimes you get first time tenants, right? People who may have just sold their house, they need to rent, so that's a different case altogether. In that sense, like, then you have to have kind of an in-depth conversation with them, say what's up, why you're renting, blah blah blah, right? Just to get a feel for that person, get to know them a little bit.
So I also had a, which I'd like to let people know about, when I was doing a lot of hire or interviewing of people. First of all, I always interviewed my tenants myself, because I wanted the feel of, I believe that when you get a tenant, it's like a marriage. You're stuck with them for whatever time that lease is. So you want to make sure that, first of all, that your personalities gel, because last thing you want to do is bring somebody in and that you can just see sparks fire, because you can't connect up with them, you can't communicate. There's a company that's called Neighborly, and it's NABOURLY, and I use them all the time, and they were great, because what they did is, I actually got my application forms from Neighborly, and they did a full check on all the tenants. Yes, it costs, but let me tell you, for what you charge is so worth it, because the last thing is it's very hard when you have a tenant that comes in that does not, if you get the tenant from hell, trust me, your life is hell. And going through the landlord and tenant board, I've been through all of that. It's not a pretty and easy way of getting rid of a tenant. Once they're in there, it's another whole situation.
Very good point. Very good point as well.
And
once
so,
they're in, they're in. You can't get them out easily.
Even if they don't pay for the rent, it's the whole process of what you have to go through. But Neighborly does a full check. They go through even all the social medias thing. They go through employment records. They go through the criminal. You can have criminal checks, a full check. I don't want to say what they cost now, but it was very reasonable. And knowing, they will even give you a rating of the chances of this person becoming delinquent or not. But it's so worth going in and checking them. Plus, like I said, for me, I really believed in meeting the people instead of a property management company, unless you really are doing well with them, because that way, The other thing that I always did is, when I had somebody coming in to look at my property, I actually met them at their car. Now, you wonder why. Here's what my analogy was. I looked in their car. If their car looked like a pigsty, well, that was an indicator that's probably how they lived.
So isn't that dating advice as well?
Well, that's another subject.
Exactly.
You can come on, let's get real, and we can talk about the dating advice.
Oh my gosh. That's so true. Actually, that is so true. The way they keep their car is usually how they're going to keep their residence. So that's a great point. And I like what you said. I mean, whether it's Neighborly, whether it's a property manager, whether it's a real estate agent, because a lot of your real estate agents, they do that as well. They do all the background checks and advise you not to take this tenant on. If you're an inexperienced landlord, then it's always good to have somebody do that for you. And it's always good to meet the tenant. I'm all about that. However, the flip side of that is, if you don't want to become chummy with them, you want to keep that arm's length from them, because it's still business. At some point in time, you may have to get rid of them, for whatever reason. And if they hit you on an emotional level, then you're hurting yourself by not getting rid of them, right? Kind of thing. So sometimes it's good to have someone else deal with them and never interact with them. Just say, hey, you know what? Just take care of this. Pick the right person. I'll let you do that, etc. If you don't want to get involved. It depends on the personality. I mean, you said you like to meet them. That's great. Me too, as well. But other people are saying, you know what? No, I'm just gonna stay away from this. Let my property manager handle it.
Yeah, no, I understand. There's two ways. If you're not able to keep your heart out, and remember, this is a business transaction.
Yeah,
this is
it
nothing
is.
to do.
Yeah.
It is business.
It is business, 100%.
So now that we've got somebody going in and into that property, what type of, there's different strategies of going in and investing in property. Do you want to bring in another strategy that we could use?
So bringing in, I'm sorry, what is the question? Just
there's rent to own, different strategies of buying.
Okay. Yeah, rent to own. I'm not a big fan of rent to own, and there's not much of that happening here. It's just a big risk for one side or the other side, right? Here we have a declining market. So by renting to own, how do you know what the property value is going to be in a couple of years when you actually firm up on that or close the deal? So rent to own, the way it works is you're renting a space or the house or whatever it is. Plus, in addition to that, you're putting some money towards a down payment, right? If you don't have the down payment now, and you come to an agreement with the landlord that he's going to sell that property to you in 2 years once you build up that down payment. So now you're on the hook because you signed a contract that you're going to buy this property from him in 2 years. How do you know the amount that you agree to is still going to be the same amount in 2 years, right? If it goes up, then the landlord is risking losing money on the sale. If it goes down, then you're risking overpaying for it and not getting qualified for it, because you still have to qualify for a mortgage at some point in time, whether it's now, whether it's 2 years from now. The bank's going to say 2 years from now, sorry, this property is not worth that amount, so we're not going to give it to you, or we're going to give you less, or whatever it is. How do you know what your financial situation is going to be in 2 years from now? Hopefully it'll still be strong. You'll be making more money, but life happens, right? You never know. Nobody predicted COVID. Nobody predicted the layoffs. Nobody predicted any of these things. So for me, 2 years or more is way too far out for me to commit to a purchase, right? So that's why I'm not a big fan of renting to own. I would suggest you're far better off, instead of putting that money to the landlord as a down payment, put it in some kind of savings or investment, a safer investment, let it build naturally. And then when you're ready in 2 years to buy something, you can buy something. Maybe it's that property if it's still available for sale. Maybe it's a different property, right? Who knows? Because you may not even want to be in that neighborhood anymore. Maybe you discovered that the neighbors on both sides are SOBs, and you don't want to deal with them, right? So I don't want to live there anymore. So, but now you're stuck because you have that rent to own contract. So I would just say, forget rent to own, just put it in some kind of investment for a couple of years, build up your down payment, maybe get help from family and friends or whatever you need to do to get in the market sooner. And then, go that route.
And during that time that you're looking at something like that, like you're saying about Lambrose, of renting or to looking at and investing that time, that's could be that time also that you also can start be educating yourself more too about the property, the areas, because really at the end of the day, area is key.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. We touched on this earlier. The neighborhood is key. You may discover that you don't like that neighborhood, right? So why would you want to commit there? Maybe there's construction going on that you didn't anticipate. That's going to cause lots of noise. Maybe it's going to block your view. Maybe you bought a condo because you love the views, and all of a sudden you find out 6 months later, oh, they're going to build another one right across from me, and it's going to block my view to the lake or whatever it is, right? So yeah, you have to really think about these things, and don't commit that far out, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah.
And, there's only also, if you're looking at it, you could go also when you're looking at a property to going to the city and finding out, what projects they have that they have
Mhm.
scheduled going on in the areas, and what is going to be developed and things like that. That's part of also doing the work that you need to do before.
Certainly. Yeah, yeah, that's a great point as well. Yeah, find out what other developments are going to be happening in the area. I mean, talk to a local realtor, talk to the city, the planning department, see, well, what's up, what are they planning to do, for sure.
It's same with looking at some major areas that are going on. We've got, like even where Oshawa became a real key community because, at one point then they decided that they were taking the go trains and they were bringing it there. So that increased the value of that area of the city because
Mhm.
now there was direct transportation from the core of Toronto right down into another area. And you know what? How would you know this? You go to all these planning departments and you find out what's going on. What do they have in store? And that way because that is only going to increase the value of the property that you're dealing with.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And there's a number of resources online as well. You can check, social media. If you follow the right people, they'll always update you on projects coming up, whether it's GO trains, whether it's you mentioned the GO train, but there's also the Highway 407
Right.
that went all the way out to Oshawa. So thereby making it a lot easier for commuters. So that really bumped up the value as well in Whitby, in Oshawa, out there.
All of that
Yeah.
center of the city.
Hmm.
So there's all sorts of ways, but what the most important key point is as you go along, start connecting, start talking to people, start phoning people like Ambrose, who always, realtors have their fingers right in what's going on in the areas. Look for people in the area where you're actually looking for as well. Don't
Yeah.
take somebody who's on the other end of the city where you're looking to buy. Even driving around and seeing the different signage, you can get an idea who's around.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I big believer in the local talking to the local agents because they have their foot on ear to the ground. They know what's happening. They know what projects are being planned. So absolutely, I agree with that.
Yeah, it's all about, when you part of all of this is creating your wealth, but it's also creating wealth is in so many ways. We've always talked about this. Wealth isn't just dollars.
Hmm.
Your wealth is your knowledge as well,
And your network, right?
and your network.
Yeah, your net worth is your network. That's
I
something
love
I
it.
like to say. It's true. It's true. You just mentioned a few minutes ago about making connections, right? So uh, that will help you enormously in anything going forward because you'll get to learn different things and you may meet the right people you know to discover something that you didn't even think about, right? So
Well, that's the whole idea, right? It's how do you learn to think outside of the box? Well, if you stay in that box, it's really hard to see outside that box. The whole idea is stepping out, learning from others, listening to what's going around. When you sit
mhm,
back and you get involved in a network group or an investing group, I'm meaning, and you listen to the conversation that goes on just by sitting there and listening to other people's, whether it's their triumphs or whether it's their learns.
yeah,
Either way, you're going to learn from it.
learn from other people's mistakes. Absolutely.
It's a lot cheaper that way, I'll tell you.
Exactly. A lot less painful.
A lot, a lot, a lot. So we're coming already to the end of the hour. I don't know. It just seems like we just begun and it's already seems that it's already over. What type of little tidbits can you give to anyone who's now looking at possibly maybe stepping into this next new venture?
Yeah, I say go for it. If you have the willingness, then there's a way to do it, right? 100%. Talk to somebody who's done it before. Talk to again a realtor. Talk to a mortgage broker. The first thing is a mortgage broker because you have to make sure that you can qualify. for an investment property. And then talk to a realtor, have them show you some possibilities, some options that maybe you haven't even thought of. And if you can't get into real estate investment, because don't forget, there's so many types of investments that we can do in real estate. It's not just about the income property itself. There is something called REITs, REIT, real estate investment trusts. So if you don't want to actually own a physical property, you can invest in a REIT. It's almost like a stock. And basically, these companies invest in apartment buildings. And apartment buildings are going to be a hot commodity. They already are, but they're going to get even better over the next few years as immigration keeps coming in. Because immigration, most people who come into the country as newcomers, they'll go to the large metropolitan areas like Toronto, Vancouver, etc., and they'll rent. So if there's apartment buildings with no vacancies, guess what? That's a good business for them, because they're always going to have the rents going up and good cash flow. And now you're investing into that, right? And there's actually some new apartment complexes being built, like purpose built for renting. So they're not condominiums; they're actually the rental buildings. So you can invest in those things through a REIT or a real estate investment trust. So yeah, if you don't want to get into the real estate game quite yet, there's other ways you can invest in real estate without owning an income property, for sure.
And remember, if you don't understand or if you need some more follow-up information, you can contact Lambrose. There'll always be his links below, so you'll be able to reach out and ask questions. If you have questions of me as an investor who has been through it, or even as a coach to help you start thinking in a different light, that's what we're here for. We're here to help you grow and to help you think in different ways, and learning that, you know what, sometimes just a conversation with people who have been through these things. Lambrose, who's also has his finger in there and is doing there, can educate you, can help you, can give you some ideas of other options of ways of learning to build your own wealth. So remember, it's one step at a time. And the most important thing is reach out and ask questions. There's no stupid questions.
Yeah, I'm always available for questions. Reach out. Happy to hear from you. I'm all over social media. If you go to my website, DemosRealEstate.ca, you'll see links to my different social channels. So whatever you're most comfortable with, or maybe you're comfortable picking up the phone, calling me, that's great. Send me a text message if you like, or call me directly. I'm always picking up my phone. So by all means, reach out.
See, it's all you have to do is ask. It's one thing that we seem to have the hardest times with. Mm-hmm. But remember, you know what? We're in a world where really people do like to help others, because that's what it's all about, right?
That's it. My philosophy is help one person every day. HOPE.
Yes, I love it. I love it. It's all about, you know what, we're all connected one way or another. So Correct. Reach out, touch somebody today, and we're here for you. That's what this is all about.
Yeah.
Lambrose, thank you so very much for joining me today and for helping to give out to others.
It was my pleasure, Glenda. Thanks again for having me.
My pleasure. And if you're watching us and you enjoyed it, please share us. Make sure that you can comment and tell us, if you've had any challenges, what they are. We will make sure to be watching the comments below, and we'll be there to help you. Take care and enjoy your weekend and make that your best day.
Thanks, David.
Bye.
Bye-bye.